Broadcasting from Silicon Valley, California, this is Conversations with Jennylyn.
You are watching Conversations with Jennylyn, and today I have a beautiful guest for you. Another one. This beautiful woman is Shareen Rivera. She's a best-selling author, a TV host, a ghostwriter, a publisher, and I don't want to spend the 30 minutes that we have scheduled telling you about all of her wonderful accomplishments. She will share those with us. Welcome, Shireen.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's just such an honor that you asked me to come on today.
I'm very excited to have you. I really think it's important that all people and women, we should promote each other, you know?
Yes.
It's what makes the world go round. So today, I thought it would be nice to do a segment with you. You are a Bay Area local.
I am.
And so it's great to hear what you've been doing here.
You know, my journey, it's just funny to see where I am today. It makes me remember where I started. And 5 years ago, you know, I would have, if somebody would have told me, Shireen, you'd be working for yourself. You're going to be the founder of a publishing company. You're going to be a best-selling author. What? But it's just proof that when you find your purpose and you put yourself out there and take risks for it, regardless of what people think, your purpose will take you to places that you can't even imagine, around people that will just bring you higher and higher in life.
I agree with you. So were you born and raised in the Bay Area?
I was raised in San Jose, California. My story is really what paved the way for me for the opportunities, because I should not statistically be at where I'm at today. I should probably be a prostitute, a drug addict, maybe even possibly dead. My grandparents raised me. Both of my parents are homeless. They are meth addicts and mentally ill. My mom lived, you know, a mile away from me with my children. I've had to drive past her with my kids in the car. So I've come from extreme childhood trauma. And with that trauma comes a lot of healing that has to be done, you know. And because I didn't take the steps till later in life to heal, I made some very poor decisions, married young, was in an abusive marriage. And it wasn't until I left and really took the steps to awakening and healing, and I started making the conscious and intentive decision to share my story, that really created all these opportunities for me in my life. And that's why my company, Rising Above Publishing Services, the motto is that sharing is an integral part of healing, because I truly believe that.
I love this. This is what I call inspiration. And this is why I produce this show, because I feel that so many people, you know, struggle with adversity. And their interpretation of that is, I am just one of these people that wasn't born for success or for anything good, because all this bad stuff is happening to me. But I have a completely different feeling about that. I feel it's an opportunity. And I've always seen a wall as a moment to bring me to my awareness in terms of strategizing and how to get around or over it, not to turn back. And clearly you have the same mentality, because
I didn't always have that mentality, though. You know,
tell us how you got there.
I remember a time when I did not feel worthy of love. I did not feel worthy of having anything good in my life, because I wasn't raised around anything like that. When I graduated high school, I was told that I cannot go to college because my grandparents did not have the money. Nobody in my family had gone to college. And I got a job as a receptionist at a law firm. And it was my boss at the law firm who became my mentor. See, God does this thing where he brings people into your life that will push you on the right place in your journey if you're receptive to it.
Mhm.
So he mentored me and helped me enroll in college. And that is what really started my awakening at a young age. Even though I continued to make really poor decisions, it was the fact that I was continuing to feed my brain knowledge. Knowledge is the key to breaking the cycles, right? Because I'm going to paraphrase an analogy by Plato. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he has this really, really strong, powerful story. And this is totally paraphrasing, but he talks about how this community of people were born in a dark, dark cave, and they lived in there all of their life, family after family. Then one day, a few of the cavemen decided to venture off, and they found an exit in the cave, and there was light, right? And they went out. And it hurt. The sun hurt their bodies, hurt their skin, hurt their eyes. But once their bodies started acclimating and they were able to open their eyes, they saw how beautiful the world was. And they were amazed. And they only went back in the cave to tell the people about the outside. And some people came, but some people were too scared and stayed. And that's what an awakening process is, that is caused by knowledge. Once your eyes open up to the light, you can no longer go back and live in the dark. And sometimes it takes a slower process for others because you're not around the people in the light. You're the only one going in the light. But once you totally dive into it, you can no longer go back. So that's kind of been an analogy of my life.
It's a great one too. And I completely agree, because so many of us, we were born into certain cycles.
Mm-hmm.
And continue those cycles, and they cycle through generations. And in my own personal life, there were some cycles that I saw and observed were not necessarily serving me or our family. And I decided that I would be the one in our family to break the cycle. And so it seems like you have done that as well, because you said, these are my circumstances, but I have options. And I'm choosing this option that will help me to live a better life and be a better parent. And you've clearly done that. So you started off as a receptionist, and tell us how you got to publishing.
It's been quite the journey, to be honest. I've always been a writer. I remember when I was 10, I wrote a poem about my grandparents, and it was published in the Mercury News. I read it. Yeah, I remember I stood up at a restaurant. I was reading it to my grandpa for his birthday, and there was a journalist for the Mercury News who heard me, and he took my poem and published it. And I remember in middle school, I was very sad and depressed about my mom going off to rehab. And the assignment in English class was to write a story. And all the other kids wrote these stories about, the little girl and the dog and going to the park and little sunshine stories. And here I was, little depressed Debbie over here, and I wrote this really deep story about a mom who was an alcoholic, and she went into a rehab, and she got sober, and she got her daughters back, and she got a job, and they got a house, and they lived happily ever after. It was like a real story. And I remember I got up in front of the class. It was my turn to read, and the teacher was like, wow, like she had tears in her eyes, and I won an award in the middle school for that story. And that always planted a seed in my head, that those two experiences, that I wanted to be a writer. But then what happens when we dare to dream? Something comes along that tries to smash that dream. And if we allow it to, it will. And that's what happened to me. I enrolled in college, and my whole thing was, I want to be a writer. I'm going to be a writer. And I took a journalism class, and I took a whole bunch of writing classes. And then one day I was sitting and telling one of my uncles that I am going to be a journalist, and I'm going to be a writer, and I'm going to be rich, and I'm going to be this. And he was like, writers don't make money. You are never going to be able to have children and support your family being a writer. What you need to do is get into law. And I was like, well, I work at a law firm. So here's the logic, right? I work at a law firm around attorneys. I should just go do that. And so that really, I just stopped. But I continued to write for myself. And it was because I already had that skill set during my marriage. I journaled for 10 years. And that's what really propelled my when I made the decision to heal and I read my journals, I remembered things that I had forgotten, right? I had pushed it away underneath that carpet in my mind because it was too painful. And I started remembering things because of my journaling and because writing has always been my saving grace. So I always tell women that come to me that have gone through trauma or in trauma, start journaling. Even if you don't know how, starting off, start asking yourself different questions, because once we start asking ourselves different questions, we'll start to train ourselves to think differently. So even asking yourself, what does a perfect day in my life look like? Right? I had never asked myself that question until one of my coaches asked me that. And I thought to myself, like, wow, I don't even know. I had never asked myself that. So it's really just about asking ourselves different questions and seeking knowledge. That has been the guiding force for me.
And also not letting people, deter you because they can't often see your dreams. And a lot of times you have to be careful who you share your dreams with, because they'll poo-poo it and tell you all the reasons why it wouldn't work. Like
Well,
this,
dreams were given to you for a reason. They weren't given to the other people.
this is why
But
you
I
don't
also,
need to share it with too many.
yes.
They will
But I
be
also believe that there are no mistakes. Everything happens the way that it should. And if you have been detoured from your dream like I have, it was for a reason. And instead of cursing the adversity that we go through, learn to embrace it, because it's only under pressure that diamonds are created. And the pain and the adversity is what creates you, what makes you stronger, and what gives you more to offer the world if you allow it to.
I completely share all of your sentiments. And I
Mm-hmm.
remembered when I started my show, this was 10 years ago. I had so many people saying, why are you wasting your time? And so I did it in conjunction with whatever job I was doing at the time. And I remember so many people saying, why are you doing it? It doesn't make any money. And why you do? And this is something that bothers me. Some people's perception of the world is a green note or whatever color it is and wherever you live. They can't see the value in something if there isn't an exchange in terms of a dollar. And for me, I wasn't born just to do things for money. I believe I was born to make a difference in people's lives. And so this show that I've been doing since 2011, if one person watches a segment, for example, this one with you, and they change their life based on your enthusiasm, your persistence, your determination, whatever they get from it, it is worth my time to sit here and do this with you.
I completely
We need
agree.
to think more about other people than some of us do. It's not just about us. And so I will keep doing this because this is my passion. And there's absolutely no doubt that this is part of my journey.
When people tell me that about doing things for free, because I believe the same thing, and a lot of the things I do I don't get paid for, like my TV show or my interviews on my YouTube channel or things that I write for people that I don't charge. Like people, why are you doing that? You need to support your children. And my answer to them is that the Zen proverb that says a cup can only be filled once it is emptied. If you're given a talent or you're given light and knowledge, it is your responsibility and your innate duty to empty it onto others so that the universe can fill your cup up more. So what I have found, when I give, I am poured into and I am provided with everything that I need and more.
Brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
My sentiment precisely. And so I don't change that, because I believe when you give, you get. You may not get it from the one you're giving it to, but someone else will bless your life.
Yes.
That's how it works in mine. And like you, I do a lot of things because I see a need. And I know that person they haven't got the resources to pay. So I just feel like this person needs this help and I can do it. So why not?
Yeah. And I love the feeling of being able to use my platforms to give other people a voice. You know, that's a really big thing for me, is to give people a chance to share. Because sharing is an integral part of healing. And I just think that if we can all step out of our shells that we're so used to being in and make ourselves vulnerable and share all of the ugly stuff, it's a beautiful thing. Because so many of us walk around and try to hide all of our scars, and we wear this mask like we have it all together, and you know, we're good and we're healthy, and it's not true. All of us have these scars that need air. They need to be let out in order for us to have healthy mental health. Mental health is a real thing. We all deal with it. You know, we've all experienced depression, sadness, anger. Mental health is a real thing. And my friend Nia told me one time, she's a licensed therapist, a decision not to deal with your mental health is still a decision on how to deal with it, right? So talking about your experiences and sharing is it's part, to me, it's part of your upkeeping of your mental health.
It's therapeutic. It's therapeutic for you because you're getting it out. You're not bottling it up. And it's therapeutic for anyone listening that you may be encouraging to voice what they're bottling up that could be holding them back and down. So I agree with that. And I believe the reason most people don't share is they're afraid of judgments. But I feel when you are comfortable in your skin, you don't really care what people's judgments of you are, unless it's going to affect you in some way, like your career. Otherwise,
but the question is, like, how do you get comfortable in your skin, right? So many of us are trained not to be comfortable in our skin. And I remember when I wasn't too. And I think back, like, how did I do that? How did I take that step to share all of the trauma I've been through? And I can only say that it was baby steps. But first, I had to learn how to share my truth with myself. So many of us don't even know how to be real with ourselves. So many of us can't even look in the mirror and tell ourselves the truth. So if you can't tell yourself the truth, how are you going to tell anybody else the truth, even if you have a therapist, right? So that's why I really encourage journaling, because it gives you the opportunity to be truthful with you.
Where are your grandparents now that raised you?
My grandpa passed away in 2012 when I was pregnant with my son. And my grandma, I was taking care of up until this year in May, and I had to put her into a nursing home. She was diagnosed with dementia, and it got really, really bad. I couldn't take care of her any longer. So that's been very difficult.
I'm sorry that you lost your grandfather, but I'm sure that they're proud of you.
Yes.
And
I know that they would be.
Your mom, where is she?
My mom is homeless.
But I'm sure she's very proud of you too. Do you have any interactions with her?
No, so that's another thing that I talk about with people.
And by the way, can I interrupt you for a second? If I ask you a question that you don't feel comfortable answering, I'm
an open book.
Okay, so okay, good.
I don't mind at all. Like, I talk about these things all the time.
Okay.
So, yeah, don't worry about that. No, I talk about this with a lot of people because it's something I think a lot of us struggle with, and that's number one, setting boundaries, and number two, letting people go, right? And I've had to do that in my own life with my parents, because I found all of my life, in my young adult life, I was trying to help my mother so much, looking for her on the streets, winter nights, finding her behind dumpsters, going into crack homes, having her sleep in my garage, detoxing, trying to get her back into the boarding cares that we would get her into. And it got to a point where it was depleting me. And it got to a point where now I'm displaying toxic behaviors around my children, going to look for my mom with my babies in the car on a cold winter night. This is not a good thing. And I would find her, and sometimes she would be high, and I couldn't convince her to get in the car. And so the last time I saw my mom, it was a really bad circumstance. She was, verbally abusing me, saying things that, no daughter should have to hear. And I don't know if she was on drugs, but I had to make that conscious decision at that time that, Shireen, you're not going to do this anymore, because some people don't want the help. They're comfortable being in this cycle because they don't have to face their truths. And so with my mother, I've had to set boundaries for myself, and I've had to let that go. She has gone missing for this past year. We can't find her at all. And, you know, I've done my part about reporting her to the police and hanging posters up, but I refuse to exhaust my energy dealing with that, because this is her journey. And so the same thing goes with my father. And so, you know, I've done that with my own parents, and some people may look at that as being a very cold thing, but I look at that as learning my worth and appreciating and valuing my mental health and my energy. And a lot of people struggle with this who have a family member that has a drug addiction or a mental health problem. It's a really fine line to set boundaries and say, no, I'm not doing this anymore, and sticking to that boundary. It's very difficult. And so many people allow their whole lives to be consumed by their family member or loved one's addiction and mental health. But you can't pour into anybody else's cup if your cup is empty. If you can't help anybody else, if you can't help yourself, right? And my 2 children need me. And so that has to be my main focus. And that's what I tell people, you know, that are dealing with the same similar struggles, is that you have to decide what is right for you, what's healthy for you, and value your mental health and peace.
Were you the only child?
No, I have a sister, and my sister's in the same thing. My sister, deals with a very chronic form of Tourette syndrome. So, you know, she's disabled in a way with that. And yeah, so it's just her and I.
I am so proud of you. It
Thank you.
takes an awful amount of strength to do everything you've described. And you sound very strong and very driven. And I think the world has got so many strong women. And somehow
You have to find your why. You know what I mean? I didn't know that I could do any of the things that I'm doing until I found my why. And that's when I had my children. You know, and I looked around, and even though I didn't know anything different than what was around me, I knew that I wanted something different for my children. And I don't think I would have experienced that push if it was just for me at the time. Now I would, but before I don't think so. And so for women, because a lot of women don't have children that come to me and say, you know, what can be my why? And I ask them, who can you help with what you've been through? That's your why. There's somebody that has to hear what you've been through, who's dealing with that loneliness and that emptiness, who don't have family. That's your why, right? So you think about and find out what your why is.
because in these situations, when you're born into a family with substance abuse, I'm told you either become, because I just spoke with someone 2 days ago, was doing some work on my house, and was telling me that he's from a family of 5, and he's the only one that doesn't have a drug addiction problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like you, started his own business, and has gone to school and is trying to make something of his life. Why do you think you did not go down that road and become a drug addict like the rest of them? What was it about you that you decided, I am not going down that road?
Well, when I was 5 years old, I remember I have this very vivid memory of my mom doing cocaine with my sister's father when she was pregnant with my sister. And they used to do it on the kitchen table while I was in bed going to sleep. They thought I was asleep, but I was watching them. And I remember thinking as a 5-year-old, gosh, every time they do that, they start arguing. I wish they wouldn't do that. And that was just stuck in my head from the time I was 5 years old. So as I, you know, grew up, of course, you're around drugs as a teenager. A lot of teenagers are in high school. There's that around you. But I always had that in my head that I was never going to do that. And as a teenager, when I was 13 years old, I ended up going with the wrong crowd, and I tried ecstasy a few times, and I smoked weed, but I never did anything more than that. You know, I just had that in my head. I didn't want to get like how I saw my mom when I was 5. And in my early 20s, when I married my ex-husband, I was drinking a lot. And it got to the point where I had to sit back and realize you have a problem. You have a problem. Even though you're not drinking every day, you're binge drinking. And because I fed my mind with knowledge, I knew that that's how addictions start. And so I just made a lot of conscious, intentional decisions not to do things, even though naturally I could probably very easily get it, become an alcoholic, because I do like to drink, right? And so that's why I don't drink, or I'll just have 1 or 2 glasses of wine once in a while, but I don't drink weekly or even monthly. And it's just been a very intentional decision on my part.
How old are your children?
My son's 8 and my daughter's 5.
We are down to 4 minutes, and I want to make sure I give you a chance to leave any message that you want, especially for young women out there who are struggling like your parents did,
Mm-hmm.
or you did because of because of the choices your parents made. What is a message you want to make sure that is left on this video before we wrap this?
My message to a young woman that's struggling, that perhaps doesn't have any family like I did, or a support system, is to not let your current circumstances define who you are, and start focusing on developing yourself. Self-development is healing. Start feeding your brain different information, especially first thing in the morning when you wake up. There's tons of free information available on YouTube, like this interview. Just start listening to different things, because even though you may not have people around you that are different, you have access to people that are different. And access can create change. Start being intentional about developing yourself. Stop looking back into the past, because the past is not where you're going forward into your future. And the moment that you start attaching yourself to your future and focusing on the future, the more distance you create from you and your past.
And I'm going to add one thing to that. Be careful who you share your dreams with, because you don't want people poo-pooing your dream. It's not theirs, it's yours. Follow your passion.
Mm-hmm.
You never know where it leads. And if you can earn your living doing what you're passionate about, it's worth it to wake up every day.
And it's possible.
And it's possible.
It's possible. There is power in the word, the written word and the spoken word. There's power in that. In the Bible, it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. Our words hold power. So watch the words that you tell yourself and the words that you speak out into the universe.
Very good. Shireen, I think this was amazing. I honestly did not think the interview would go down this road. I thought we were going to talk a little bit more about your books and stuff like that. But I'm glad that it took this turn, because I feel like somebody out there is going to benefit from this message.
Vulnerability is always the answer.
Right? Tell me a little bit about your book quickly, though, before we go. I know you're a best-selling author. What was your book about?
So my best-selling book was a compilation of stories of women that I was in. It was for the Viva book. It was the bestseller. But I have 4 other books as well, and I'm co-authoring several other books that are coming out. One of the books that is mine, that are stories of mine, and the 6 lessons that I've learned in life to remain open to love, and that means loving yourself, and that's called To Love Again, and that is on Amazon. And then the first book I wrote is a compilation of poetry telling my story, that's called Raw Confessions. And then I also have a book that I co-authored that's coming out called My House to Paint, with my client Marshall Jones, and he's an amazing man with an amazing story. I can't wait for his book.
Awesome. I must have you do this before we go, and I hope you can.
Yeah.
Tell us the poem that you wrote to your grandfather. Let's wrap with that.
Oh my gosh, honestly, I don't remember the poem. I was 10.
Okay, and you don't have access.
And you know what's funny? I have difficulty remembering my poems. That's something I struggle with.
I do too.
So the first time I was required to memorize a poem was when I rehearsed it at the Women's March in San Jose earlier this year. I had one day, and it was really hard. So that's something I struggle with.
Well, we've run out of time, and I've really enjoyed spending this time with you. I'm so happy that we've done this segment. I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that some young woman who is struggling, similar situation, or just struggling, will gain some encouragement from you, because
me too.
So positive.
Thank you.
Beautiful and positive and accomplished. See, I think that women just need to keep lifting each other up, because when we all stand together, we will add so much more value to this world that is divided.
And protecting our energy space. Exactly. Women need to protect their energy space. Just because people want to hang out with you or be around you doesn't mean you need to give them your space. Some people are not good for you.
Well, the key is to determine who is and who isn't. You have made that determination. Just send them off into the light with love.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me on, Jennylyn.
I've really enjoyed this time with you.
Me too.
Thank you for watching Conversations with Jennylyn. I do this with the hope that every conversation will inspire or trigger something for the better in you. And again, thank you for watching Conversations with Jennylyn. When a conversation is all you need to be inspired, like the one I've just shared with you with Shireen. And I will see you next time.
Broadcasting from Silicon Valley, California, this is Conversations with Jennylyn.